Today on Stock Charts in Focus, we're showing you two of the easiest, most powerful ways to review key groups out there in the markets. We're talking S&P 500, 400, 600, Dow Industrials, NASDAQ 100, and more. Using stock charts, we're going to save those groups right to your account into a chart list. Make it incredibly easy to review those key groups, whether you want to see charts for all of them or performance data, different fundamental metrics, you name it, you can see it for those key groups. We're going to do it in two ways, show you how easy it is to put these right into your own account. So you know what it is. It's all new. It's all here. It's Stock Charts in Focus. All right, my friends, welcome to the show, Stock Charts in Focus, of course, our product-focused show here on the channel where we dig into the site, dive into those tools, walk through those features, and ultimately help you get more value out of stock charts. That's our mission here every Friday. My name is Grayson Rose, Director of Operations here at StockCharts.com. As always, great to be with you for another show. This one is timely. I gotta say, we got some wild things happening in the markets. We've seen such a pullback, a very, very swift and pretty aggressive pullback out there in the markets. But now the bulls have been charging back, right? The last couple of weeks, we've seen the markets absolutely fly higher. Tons and tons of individual stocks making big moves, some on earnings, some just catching a bid and moving higher. And so, it begs the question, how do you dig into those key indexes? You see things like the S&P 500 moving, multiple sessions in a row to the upside. Well, there's stocks that are driving that index, right? We want to dig into the individual components. We want to see those 500 names, find the strongest, find the winners, stay away from the laggards, stay away from the weak ones. And we want to do the same thing for the Dow. We want to do the same thing for the NASDAQ 100, for some of the other S&P groups as well, like small caps and mid caps. Digging into those indexes, actually narrowing down to the individual members, the individual components within, is a very, very important thing that we as investors and we as traders want to do. And using the power of stock charts, it's incredibly easy to do that. So that's what we're going to show you on the show today. Two different ways to save those groups, save the actual members for those key indexes right to your own account. Once you put those stocks into a chart list in your own account, it becomes very, very easy to review them. You can see the charts for all of those individual names. You can use the summary view to actually see key data points for those, like dividends, earnings dates, performance over different periods of time. You can even use our performance view for that chart list to actually compare and contrast how some of those names within those indexes have been moving over different time periods. If you want to see the top performers over the last 1 month, the top performers year to date, different things like that, you can use the performance view. So lots of different things that you can do once you save these groups into a chart list. We'll take a quick look at that. But we're going to do this, like I said, in two different ways. One, very, very simple, very, very easy, just saving those groups right to a new list in your own account. And then we'll take it one step further. We'll actually take a look at how to use the scan engine to save some of these groups. That's going to allow you to add even more filters. So if you actually wanted to see things like only the S&P 500 stocks above a $50 billion market cap, that is incredibly easy to do with our scan engine. So lots of good things on the show today. Very timely, going to help you really dig into those indexes as we see the markets rally back here. Let's jump over to the site without further ado and get into it. So as you might imagine, we're starting today's show on our members dashboard, kind of the heart and soul of stock charts, but also a fantastic place to access not only your chart lists, but also your scans. So we'll take a look at this kind of in the back half of the show. We'll return to this page. What we're going to do to start, again, what we're doing is taking those major indexes, taking those key indexes, and saving the individual components to a chart list in our account. This is incredibly easy to do in just a few clicks. So we're going to show you that first way to do it right now. We're going to look for that chart list button in the top right corner of the dashboard. Give that a click, and that's going to take us down to all of the different chart lists in your account. Now, what you might want to end up with is something kind of similar to the following. As you can see right here, I've got these lists already saved in my account. So S&P 100, 500, 400, 600, the NASDAQ 100 members, and then a couple of those key Dow industry groups, or Dow indexes, the Dow Industrials, the transports, and the utilities. All of these are incredibly easy to create using the edit view for chart lists. So that's what we're going to do right now. But this is kind of where we're eventually going. This is what you might want to end up with, or some subset of this. Maybe you don't want all of these groups. Maybe you just want the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100, and the Dow, but these are very, very easy to create. And we're going to end up with these chart lists in your account. So from this page, once we get down to our chart list, over on the right side actually is one of the easiest places to create a new chart list. You've got this little new button in the top right corner. Give that a click, and this is going to allow you to set a name for your chart list. And if you did want, you can set a number of symbols in here. So if you're creating a sort of a random list to start, you could type in a whole list of symbols here. In our case, though, we're going to start by creating a list for the S&P 500, and we do not want to type 500 symbols into this box right here. So I'll show you how easy it is to do this. Now, just so this one is easy to find, I'm actually going to add a star to the top of it, but we're going to type in a name for our list. It's going to be S&P 500 members. So I've added those stars just so it becomes easy to find in our account for the sake of today's demo. But type in that name and then hit create new list. Now, what this is going to do is create a totally blank list in our account. There's going to be nothing in this. All we've done is create that shell, right? And we've given it a name of S&P 500 members. When you create one of these chart lists in your account for the very first time, it actually takes you right to where we want to go for the sake of today's show, and that is the edit view. So up here at the very top, you can see that we are viewing this list in edit mode. Now we're going to come back to some of these other views once we actually fill this thing in. But what we want to start on is the edit view, and we actually are taken right there when we create this new list. We get this nice little welcome message that says, "Hey, if you want to add some things to your new chart list, just hit the button below." So that's what we're going to do. We're going to hit that add symbols button. We also have another one over here. I like to point that out to people, by the way. So as you're working with these chart lists over time, you can always add symbols to any list using that green button right there. When you first create one of these, though, you've got that big green button in the middle of the page. When you give that a click, it pulls up a dialog box with a couple of different options. Now, this is going to be the same for any new list that you create. This is kind of always how things are going to work. For the sake of today's action, though, we're going to look for that from group option. So you can add one symbol at a time. You can, of course, add multiple symbols at a time. Again, just typing in a list of ticker symbols in that box. You can even upload symbols from a CSV file if you do have that saved to your machine. But for today, what we're looking for is this from group tab. This is the very, very important one. So what this allows us to do is create these chart lists and then fill them with predefined groups, predefined collections of symbols. You've got a couple of different options down here, actually. You can select from different industry groups if you wanted to save the components for those. But for us, we're going to open up this top menu. Now, you've got a whole bunch of different options in here. You can actually save the components of different S&P sectors. We've got a couple miscellaneous groups down at the bottom as well. Big list of cryptocurrencies, for instance. But right up here at the top, you can see we've made it first up in this menu. We've got our different indexes that we can select from. So this is going to match up well with what we just showed back in my own account, where I've actually saved these lists to my own account. The only one that I actually didn't have was the TSE 300. So all you have to do to create the chart list with the components for any of these indexes is select the one that you want to add to your own account. It really is that simple. So in the case of what we're doing today, again, we created our chart list. We named it S&P 500 members. We're going to open up this dialog, select from group, and then in the menu here, we're going to select S&P 500. Now, all we have to do is hit add charts. It's going to load really quickly, and you can see that we now have 500 charts saved to this list, 500 symbols that are the components of the S&P 500. So you now get to take this list, it's saved in your own account, and you get to work with those 500 symbols in the S&P 500. You can do this in any way that you want using any of those chart list views that you're hopefully already familiar with. So once we save this, again, we've got all 500 of those symbols already in this list. We can now simply jump over to any of the other chart list views for this list and start to review those symbols. So for instance, we can jump over to the summary page. We can see all 500 symbols listed out in the summary view. And if we wanted to see, sorted by sector, if we wanted to see what are the top gainers today in the S&P 500, we can do anything with this list. We can sort them by market cap from top to bottom, or click it again to sort from bottom to top. We can look for, what are the latest earnings, the next earnings reports coming up in the S&P 500. We can sort by that. We've even got a whole bunch of other columns here that you can choose from. So this is kind of the typical view that I like to look at: price data, sector and industry, and market cap with earnings dates on there as well. But any of these other columns are going to be fair game as well. So we could turn on volume, we could turn on some of our EMAs, some of those technical indicators like RSI, ATR, ADX. We can even add dividends, both trailing 12 months and forward 12 months, and ex-div dates as well. We can even do earnings per share or PE values. You've got all of these different columns that you can turn on here in the summary view. Once you turn those on, you'll see that this table gets pretty wide. We do sort of just push everything out to the right. But again, this is going to allow you to see the S&P 500 stocks sorted by any of this criteria that you want to see. So if you want to see, what are the biggest trailing 12-month dividend payers on a per share basis in the S&P 500, you can answer that question really quickly. We can answer, what is the highest RSI value in the S&P 500 right now? Well, we can quickly turn that on and see that TransDigm, TDG, followed by IT Gartner Group, those have the highest RSI values in the S&P 500 right now. So anything that you want to do with this list, you can do it here in the summary view. Very, very cool what you can do with this list. Now, one other thing that I do want to point you to as well, once you've created some of these lists for these different key indexes, one of the other things that could be helpful is to turn on either daily or weekly reports. When you turn these on, for instance, the weekly report, at the end of the week, this will actually send you an email right to your account with all of those symbols summarized, so you can see what the biggest gainers and what the biggest losers on the S&P 500 or any of these other indexes are that week. You can do the same thing with the daily report. Very, very helpful. And to do that with some of these key indexes, always a nice thing to get in your inbox at the end of the week. Now, just quickly running through some of these other chart list views. Of course, if you want to review the charts for all 500 stocks in the S&P 500, you can do that with the chart list view. Makes it very, very easy to simply scroll through these charts. So now, maybe it's a Sunday, you're sitting down with a cup of coffee in the morning and you want to say, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to study all 500 names in the S&P 500, see how each one individually is setting up. You can easily do that by simply creating this list, populating it with those index components, and then scrolling through chart list view. So here are all 500 stocks charted in the S&P 500 for you to work with. Now, if you wanted to delete any of these, maybe you want to sort of whittle down the S&P 500 to only the names that look really good to you, you can quickly delete any of these names simply by hovering over right here. You also have a couple other actions in here, for instance, annotations. If you wanted to actually annotate some of these S&P 500 charts, you can do that right from this chart list view. Couple of the other views that are key. You've got chart book view, which is basically going to be the same, just one chart at a time. So this would allow you to flip through the S&P 500, for instance, as if it is a book, flipping through one chart at a time. Gallery view is going to give you every stock in the S&P 500 from multiple time frames. You've got an intraday view up there. We've got our daily chart here. Then we get a weekly chart, longer term look, and then we get a point and figure chart for all 500 of those names. Again, allows you to flip through those different time periods for all of those names in any of these indexes. And the list really goes on here. If you wanted to see all 500 in CandleGlance, little mini charts of the entire S&P 500, you can do that very, very easily with this view here. You've also got things like RRG, seasonality charts, market carpets. The list really keeps going on. One that I do want to highlight though is the performance view. This is one of the ones that I touched on before. Very, very cool view. This allows you to take all of the names in a chart list, for instance, the S&P 500, and actually see these in sort of their price performance over some period of time. Now, actually, because this is a view that I like to use pretty frequently, you're seeing already one of the very cool things that you can do with this page. So we can actually turn this off. Now we're looking at the price performance of all of those S&P 500 stocks over these different time periods. So 1 day performance, 5 day performance, 1 month, 3 months, 6 month, year to date, and 1 year performance all in there. Again, we can sort these. So if we wanted to see, for instance, what's the year to date biggest gainer in the S&P 500, we can quickly answer that. It is NVIDIA, followed by Meta, followed by Royal Caribbean Cruises, RCL. We can sort by any of these time periods, and we can sort from top to bottom or bottom to top, just like that summary view that we were looking at. So a really, really nice feature here. The performance view allows you to see some of those different performance numbers for the entire group all in one place. The really cool thing though is that you can actually set a benchmark symbol. So we saw this actually when I first loaded the page. I had everything benchmarked against VTI. If we wanted to benchmark all of the S&P 500 stocks against the S&P 500 itself, we could come up to this compare to box, type in SPY and hit go. And you can see what this is actually going to do is reformat the performance of everything in this list against SPY, against the S&P 500. So this will show you which stocks have outperformed or underperformed the S&P 500 itself over these different time frames. So we can see, for instance, again, year-to-date performance. NVIDIA, we saw that big gain, almost 300% there in NVIDIA. We can now see that it's also outperformed SPY year-to-date by 214%. If we wanted to see the biggest year-to-date laggards, we can flip this back upside down. We can see Solar Edge, the biggest laggard in the S&P 500 by 91%. So very, very cool what you can do with this table. Again, sorting by different time frames, and even on a relative basis, you can see these different performance numbers for anything in the list. So makes it very, very easy to work with these different groups. Now, just to take us back, let's go kind of repeat that process. We'll jump back to our chart list here on the dashboard, and we'll do this for the Dow stocks. So let's type in our star, and we'll type in Dow Industrials. If I can type quickly here as we're talking, we're going to type in a name. We're going to hit create list. Once we jump over to that edit page, again, we're going to look for that big green button, hit add symbols, select our from group tab. And now let's say we wanted to add the Dow 30 stocks, the classic Dow Industrial stocks. So we can do the same thing, select that predefined group right there, hit add charts, and you'll see that's going to save all 30 Dow stocks right to our account. So the exact same process that we just did with the S&P 500. Once again, we can review the Dow stocks in summary view. We could review the Dow stocks in CandleGlance. We could get that mini chart view of all 30 Dow stocks all in one place. We can even do some of these other views like the symbol summary, another one of my favorites that I like to highlight for people. This is going to be kind of that full-featured high-level research tool. The symbol summary brings in tons and tons of different data. You've got charts over different time periods you can select here, but it's also going to bring in key fundamental metrics, key technicals, earnings charts right in here, as well as the scooter rank, and is even going to show you a profile of that company, a little corporate description, where they're located, how many employees they have, different things like that. So if you wanted to flip through the Dow stocks in this symbol summary view, again, very, very easy. We create that list, we fill it with that pre-canned list, that predefined group of Dow stocks, and we can now simply flip through all 30 stocks in the Dow on that symbol summary view. We can see all of these different key metrics, compare and contrast for all stocks in that index. So as you're seeing, this is very, very quick, very, very easy to create these lists. This is sort of the straightforward way to create these lists. Again, create those new empty lists, fill it in with that predefined group. Once you've done that, you've got all stocks in those major indexes right there in your own account, and you can start to work with those lists. There is a more advanced way to do this though, so that's going to be our second stop on today's little tour. We'll jump back to the dashboard, and we are actually going to use the scan engine to do exactly what we just did, but with some added customizability, some added flexibility, some added power. So from the dashboard, you're going to hit that little scans button in the top right corner. If you don't see the scans button, make sure that you open up that little preferences icon, turn on scans and alerts. That should give it to you. This is going to take us right down to our scans panel where we can access any of our saved scans. From there, we're going to hit the new scan button. That's going to take us right over to the scan workbench, and we're actually going to reset this criteria so that it's totally blanked out. We'll delete this right here, and we'll actually delete this line as well. So now we are on the scan workbench. Now, scanning is a big topic. It is a major power feature of stock charts, and there's a lot more to cover in scans than we can really hit on today's show. So if you're already a little bit familiar with how the scan engine works, this is going to be nice and easy for you. A good refresher on kind of how you can use the scan engine to create some of these lists for yourself. If you're brand new to scanning, stick with me. This will still give you a great sense of kind of what you can do with the scan engine, and hopefully it's a little bit of an inspiration to start learning more about the power of scanning. So the scan workbench lets you type in everything on your own if you do know the criteria up here. But we also have this scan component section down at the bottom. This allows you to basically select the criteria that you want to fill in with your scans, and you don't actually have to write any of that scan syntax yourself. Makes it very easy to start building scans simply by selecting what you want from these different menus down here. So if you look through these menus, you've got different things like ticker properties, you've got scooter groups and different things like that. One of the options that you do have though is this indexes and ETFs group down here at the bottom. When you open that up, you'll see that this looks a little bit like that menu that we had on our edit view for the chart lists. What this allows you to do is select any of those predefined groups that we were looking at before, and you even have a couple of other options in here as well. This allows you to select any of those predefined groups and then scan for only those stocks. So for instance, if we wanted to, we've done the Dow, we've done the S&P 500. Let's say we wanted to create a chart list in our account for the NASDAQ 100. This would allow us to select that criteria and then hit add. And when we jump up to the top, you can see that we now have that scan syntax for that group right in there for us. We didn't have to write any of that scan syntax. All we had to do was select it from the menu down below, and that's quickly going to give us what we need to scan for that group. So in this case, now we've written a scan that is just show me the stocks in the NASDAQ 100. When we hit run scan, you'll see that this is going to open this up, and this gives us all 100. You can see 100 matching results there. 100 stocks in the NASDAQ 100. We can see all of those right here. Now we could work with them here. We can actually see little mini charts if we hover over any of these symbols, and we could click on the name to actually open up a chart of that symbol. What we might want to do though is take this list and again, save it to our account. So we can use this big green button in the top right corner, and here from the scan results page, we've got a couple of different options. We can save a new list, either Sharp Charts or ACP if you are an ACP user. We can save this with a name, so maybe we want to do NASDAQ 100. And we're going to hit save list. If we had another list in our account that we want to save these stocks to, we could also do that, either merge them into the other list or replace another list with those stocks. In our case though, let's say we wanted to create a new list with the NASDAQ 100 stocks. We can hit save list. And now we are back over on those the chart list view that we were looking at before. Here we have that NASDAQ 100 list, and we're back into summary and chart list view and symbol summary, all of those other chart list views that we were looking at before. So this is kind of the other way to create these groups. You can actually use the scan engine to pull up those groups and then save them to your account using that save to chart list button on the scan results page. Now, at this point, you might be saying, well, this seems a little more complicated. Why are we doing it this way when we've got that edit view? Here is the kicker. If you do this through the scan engine, it allows you to also add in some other criteria, some other filters that you might want to start using as you're creating these lists. So let's say that you wanted only NASDAQ 100 stocks, again, like we mentioned before, above a $50 billion market cap. You can start to add in additional filters like that using the scan engine, and then basically get a subset of any of these indexes that you might want to be reviewing. So again, we can type the syntax up here at the top if we do know it, or we can come into, for instance, ticker properties, select market cap, and hit add. Now this is going to be in millions. So if you're looking at 500, for instance, that's going to be a market cap above 500 million. In our case, if we wanted to do above 50 billion, we're going to do 50,000. 50,000 million turns into 50 billion basically. So here is that syntax for market cap above 50,000. And I always like to pause on market cap specifically, because this is a great little representation of breaking down the barriers of the scan engine. Scanning, and when you sort of see this syntax, right, it can look a little bit tricky at first, but it actually is pretty straightforward. When you start to look at these scans and you just sort of say, okay, I'm going to try to read it and figure out what it's saying, the scan engine actually is pretty friendly. So in this case, what we're doing is group is NASDAQ 100 and market cap is greater than 50,000 million or 50 billion. In this case, it's a pretty straightforward scan to run, but what it's going to return is only those NASDAQ 100 symbols above a $50 billion market cap. So again, we can start to add in these different filters if we want to create sort of subsets of any of these indexes. When we hit run, we can see that we're now going to get 52 names back instead of the 100 that we got when we scanned for the NASDAQ 100 itself. So again, if you wanted to save this list to a chart list, we could do new list, maybe save this as NASDAQ 100 above 50 billion. And we're going to save that list to our account. And then from there, we've got our 52 stocks in the NASDAQ 100 above a $50 billion market cap, and we can do the exact same things. For instance, if we wanted to come here and sort those by market cap, we could quickly and easily do that. Now we're sorting from low to high. We could resort it from high to low. We can see our 52 NASDAQ 100 stocks right in here, all in the above $50 billion market cap. Again, same thing. We can jump into ChartList View, start to review these, find the winners, avoid the laggards, different things like that. So the scan engine is very, very cool because it allows you to build in some of this additional criteria. If you wanted to add in, for instance, PE ratios above some level, maybe above 15 or above 20 or below 20, maybe you want to find the sort of cheaper stocks out there in the NASDAQ 100. Any of those different things you can do here. Let's say only PE ratios above 25. We can run that scan. Now we get 27 names back. So the scan engine, again, provides a great way to take some of these groups and then add in your own filters. Maybe you want more technical criteria. Maybe you want only NASDAQ 100 stocks above their 20-day moving average. That type of thing, also very easy to do. We can come into technical indicators. We can say, let's do the 20-day EMA. If we add that in, we can see EMA 50. We'll change that to 20. And we'll delete some of this stuff. We'll do close is above EMA 20. So now we're looking at NASDAQ 100 stocks that are trading above their 20-day exponential moving average. So again, the scan engine lets you take some of these key index groups, add in your own criteria, and start to filter those down and then save them to your own account. So that is our show for today, digging into some of these key indexes. Again, a great way to think about the markets, a great way to review what's happening. Instead of thinking from the top down, looking at those indexes and then trying to find the stocks within, you can go from the bottom up. You can use some of these tools to create these lists in your account. Figure out which stocks are actually working. Use that to kind of drive your analysis of the market. Being able to review all of those individual components in the S&P 500, the S&P 600 if you want to look at small caps, the Dow indexes, the NASDAQ 100, different things like that. It is a very, very powerful way to review the markets, and it's made easy using ChartList. Again, you can save these predefined groups from that edit view, or if you want to take it to the next level, check out the scan engine, use some of those menus to select your groups, and then add in additional criteria, whether it's technical, fundamental, you name it. You've got options in that scan engine. So hopefully this has been a little inspiration for you too, to go check out the power of the scan engine. It really does drive, I would say, the majority of my process. So many things that I do, so many things that our StockCharts power users do, it's all driven by scanning. So check that out. There's a lot to learn, but a lot of capability there built into the StockCharts scanning tools. And we got plenty of resources to help you learn more about writing scans, and you've even got some sample scans and things like that you can use to get started pretty easily. So remember, we do this show every Friday. Our mission every Friday, just digging into the site, walking through tools and features, ultimately trying to help you get more value out of StockCharts. Hopefully you've seen that this week as we dig into some of these tools, chart lists and scanning and things, showing you different ways to use those and to make things easier for you. Again, our mission is to make things as easy as possible for you. So building some of those lists, seeing those index components, just a couple of clicks, and you can save those right to your account and then start to review those charts, review the data, review the price performance history, compare and contrast, all that good stuff. Hopefully you've seen that today. We're always looking for different ways to review the site and the platform and all that. Every Friday, though, there's always something new. So definitely join us for another episode of StockCharts In Focus very soon. Again, my name is Grayson Rose, Director of Operations here at StockCharts.com. It's been great to be with you. I'll see you again next week for another episode. But until then, chart on, my friends.